Hello and welcome back. You're watching World Talks and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Another escalation could be in the cards as Donald Trump has threatened to intervene in Iran if its government kills demonstrators who came out to protest rising living costs. This prompted warnings from senior Iranian officials that any American interference would cross a red line. Daniel Pipes, founder of the Middle East Forum, joins me on the show to help me understand where are the protests headed and could the U.S. afford to get itself involved in a conflict? Thank you so much for joining me on World Talks. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for the invitation.
So how would you interpret Supreme Leader's Ali Khamenei's call to, quote, put the perpetrators of unrest in line? And what does it signal about the authorities' likely response to the protests in the coming days?
Well, as usual in a dictatorship, any protest, any opposition is presented as treachery, as conspiracy, as working for the enemy. Khamenei did concede that there are economic issues, but he is unwilling to concede more than that, and he is ready to crack down. However, the violence against the rebel forces so far has been quite limited. It does appear that the government is fearful of being too violent. It does appear that the government of the Islamic Republic is worried about being too aggressive. It does seem that this round, and it's maybe the 10th round in the last 46 years, it does seem that this one is more profound, more widespread than any of the previous ones. And the economic situation is more difficult. So this one could be the final one. Who knows? But this is more serious than any that has come before.
Final one. So when do you think there's going to be that straw that's going to break the camel's back? I mean, this is the biggest protest that we've seen in Iran since 2022, and there is a lot of social unrest to a point where even Donald Trump said that he's going to step in. Do you think we're getting closer to a point where possibly there could be a massive change of leadership following the protests?
I think so. And I'd like to note that while there have been a number of major revolutions around the world, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the Iranian Revolution, it's really only the Iranian one of 1978-79 that was massive, that was countrywide, that involved millions and millions of people on the street. So Iran has a history of revolution that is extraordinary. And I can't tell you if that's what's going to happen here, but it looks like a real possibility, in part because people are sick of the Islamic Republic and its draconian ways, and in part because people are sick of the economic mismanagement that has led not only to economic decline, but actual lack of water. I mean, people don't have enough water. This is extraordinary. So there's great impatience, and the possibility is certainly there that this time the Islamic Republic will not survive.
Mm-hmm. We've heard from President Trump, because I would like to pay closer attention to what's been said so far that sparked such a reaction from senior Iranian officials. He said that if Iran were to shoot and kill protesters, the U.S. would, quote, come to their rescue. He also added that we are locked and loaded and ready to go, without actually explaining what this could mean in practice. So what do you think that the U.S. would step in, and what would they do in order to stop the Iranian leadership from hurting its people?
After the events of early this morning in Venezuela, it would be a foolish thing to do to predict that Donald Trump will not take some extraordinary action. We've never had a president like him who is so personal in his decisions. He just does what he wants to do. There is no guiding ideology. There is no consensus being developed. There's no consulting or listening to Congress. So, yeah, who knows? Trump could send in U.S. forces into Iran. I wouldn't bet against it, though. I don't quite see how it would work. Would he extract Khamenei as he extracted Maduro? I don't know. I mean, this morning's news was such a shock. We Americans wake up each day wondering what is today's shock. So I can't predict, but anything is possible with Donald Trump as president.
It's fair to say that we all woke up to this news being quite astonished by the latest developments and what followed. Now, along with the words of senior Iranian official Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, he wrote on his X account, he said, Trump must realize that U.S. intervention in this domestic matter will lead to destabilization of the whole region and the destruction of American interests. What consequences would this move, if the U.S. decided to move into Iran, would have for the stability or instability of the region and for the whole world too?
Well, that depends on what kind of move there is. If it is attacking nuclear infrastructure, not much. If it's extruding the leadership, not much. If it is going on the ground with forces, it could be very large. So it depends. I assume that the president and his advisors are perfectly aware that the American public is not ready for a war with Iran and will avoid such a thing. But then again, I assume that they didn't want a war with Venezuela, and the president in his press conference announced that the United States is going to run Venezuela for the indefinite future. So, it's just, I think a war with the Islamic Republic would be a mistake. We should be helping the opponents, the Iranian opponents of the regime. We should be doing a lot to help them with money and arms. We should not ourselves be taking down the regime in Tehran.
Larijani also wrote, quote, the American people must know that Trump is the one that started this adventure and they should pay attention to the safety of their soldiers. Sounds quite stark. Do you think that the U.S. troops' safety could be jeopardized? I mean, we've seen an attack on an airbase in Qatar in June. Would we have to expect other attacks not only on military establishments locally, but also perhaps back in the U.S.?
The Iranians have indeed an infrastructure that they could mobilize that might include personnel and drones and other capabilities. They could certainly harm Americans and American interests. But when it comes to warfare, I don't think the Iranian military can stand up to the American any more than the Venezuelan one could, any more than the Iraqi could. The problem would be not so much the military itself, but the guerrilla tactics that the Iranians might use, bombing and droning and so forth. And yes, the Iranians could do real damage to Americans, to the United States, to be sure. And therefore, it's the reason why we should not go in and try and overthrow the regime. We should be helping those who want to overthrow the regime. And I would say the same for Venezuela. We should help those who want to overthrow the regime. We should not do it ourselves.
Do you think that the U.S. could actually afford engagement on different fronts? We are looking at the conversations taking place in regards to the war in Ukraine. These are just conversations, but now we're seeing escalation in Venezuela. We also heard that President Donald Trump mentioned something about the president of Colombia. If I remember correctly, he also responded to Iran. Do you think that the U.S. could afford to be engaged in so many places at once?
Yes, these are not what are called peer rivals. This is not China. This is not Russia. These are rather small militaries, rather small states. So yes, both in financial and military terms, the United States can afford it. However, Donald Trump did not run on a platform of invading countries. I don't think the American public, which was burned 20 years ago with the Iraqi and Afghan expeditionary forces, is ready for expeditionary forces to Venezuela and Iran. So it would be, I think, a great mistake to do that. It could be done. The United States has the money and the military force to do it, but I don't think it has the will to do it. Americans are not that upset about Iran and Venezuela. This is not 1945. This is not defeating Germany and Japan and Italy. This is not total war. These are rather minor problems compared to that. And I don't think Americans are ready for that kind of engagement.
What do you think would be the outside response, the Allied response, if the U.S. decided to take steps in Iran? I mean, Iran's allies, what do you think they would do if the U.S. took more significant steps when it comes to supporting the civil population?
Well, Iran's allies are primarily China and Russia, and we saw in July they did nothing. So I'd be inclined, in June, I'd be inclined to think they wouldn't do much now either. Their talk, they wouldn't do much.
So they don't find
so Iran is quite isolated.
So Iran is quite isolated, and its own allies do not find Iran to be worthy of some sort of a response, you would say?
Not significant response. They would not endanger their own interests on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They'll provide it with a lot of words.
Sorry to interrupt. I would also like to talk more on Venezuela and on the situation and the response that was issued, because Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said, what matters is that when a person realizes the enemy is arrogantly trying to impose something on the country, on the officials, on the government, and on the nation, one must stand firmly against the enemy and bare one's chest in resistance. We will not yield to the enemy. Do you think that the Iranian government is going to tread lightly and carefully after seeing what happened in Venezuela?
I believe so. I think this is a quite similar circumstance, and Trump has used quite similar language, and there must be a lot of concern in Tehran about what has happened today in Venezuela. Yes. Trump has shown he is ready to take steps that a conventional president would not take.
Thank you. That was Daniel Pipes, founder of the Middle East Forum, joining me here on World Talks. Thank you so much for joining me on the program.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And so this would be all for now. Thank you for joining me. I'm Klaudia, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment.